Yeah, one of them I almost left blank. Well, I almost left it blank, but I just wrote down something crazy.
I couldn't think of words. I need a word bank or something.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Are we going to go over the answers? Yes. Thank you.
Good. I need to know my mistakes. I need to know how badly I fucked up. Did I surpass or did I just not? Do I need to just go home?
Right.
But at least I learned.
Come on, projector, come on.
I'm pretty sure
So
Philip.
that was the problem.
Okay, until the projector gets itself in the mood to turn on.
Yeah, man, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
just
wish I would have written it down. If I would have written it down, I would have remembered.
You need
What's
please.
the first one? I got that
Turning off.
I remember that last question. What does gymnasia mean?
give us all.
Like,
The gymno.
yeah, gymno, that thing.
Yep.
Naked.
Yep.
I remember that because that was the weirdest fact of the day.
Right.
Okay, that's what I was.
Well, anyway. Bacteria have which type of cell types? Prokaryotic.
Yes.
And which gram reaction type bacteria have a thicker cell wall with significant amounts of peptidoglycan? Gram positives. And what color would they stain? This is just fun.
Purple or blue?
They would retain the primary stain, which is a crystal.
Purple or blue?
Do protists have prokaryotic or eukaryotic cell types? Eukaryotic.
That one on.
Okay, so it's only the bacteria and the archaeans that have prokaryotic. Everything else has eukaryotic. All protists are autotrophic. False. You've got paramecia that are heterotrophic. You've got amoebas that are heterotrophic. You've got mixotrophs who get all kinds of nutritions. Archaea are bacteria-like and often live in extremophile environments. This one gets a little picky, but it was on the outline too. I think we may have mentioned it. Halophiles live in extreme blank conditions. Saline or salt?
What if you put
No. pH is different. That would be an acidophile, or usually.
I don't remember what's going on.
Sorry,
That's nice.
but you were close. But number 6, true or false? Our intestines are home to an estimated 500 to 1,000 species or kinds of bacteria. And we all say normally, of course. And you just assume normally. True. That is true. And that was on. That was a statement right out of the outline, I believe. With respect to unique structures of some bacteria, what is the most resistant structural form of life known of some bacteria requiring autoclaving and other extreme techniques of sterilization? We talked about it in that other room. What is it? Endospores. Endospores, E-N-D-O spores. Draw a streptococcus-shaped and arranged bacteria, so you'd have circles and they'd be in a chain. Which genotype of organisms are found in the kingdom Protista? And then I answered they include algae, slime molds, which we really didn't talk about,
Just the
included.
plants.
And which other main group? And if you think of lab, common name, what? Okay, algae are plant-like, right? So what are the animal-like ones called?
Fungi.
What?
Is that fungi?
No, fungi are not protists.
Is it Prometheus?
Well, Paramecium's an example of an animal a protozoan. Protozoans. So where do you look at that whole protist?
All right, 4 so far I haven't gotten wrong. Nice.
You have algae, which we talked quite a bit about. You have slime molds, which we didn't really talk about that much, but they're kind of half fungal. You know, they're kind of fungal-like. And then we have protozoans, which are the paramecium, the amoebas, and animal-like because they move and they're unicellular. So protozoa, proto meaning first, zoa as in zoo, as an animal, so protozoan. So algae, protozoans are the two main groupings, and then the salmons. Mixotrophs combine photosynthesis and which type of nutrition? Nutrition is how they get their food. What? Heterotrophic, thank you. They eat other things, like we do. We're
Should know
heterotrophic.
that.
We eat other things. Certain dinoflagellates at certain times of the year can cause unfavorable conditions for swimming and other things in the water due to this bloom. What is it? Red tide, yes, red tide.
I just put algae bloom.
Diatoms have
I didn't get that
kovacs-like shapes whose skeletons are made of this type of chemical composition. What is it? Silica. Good. Silica, or even if you put glass.
One, 2, 3, 4,
The
5,
silica
6.
helps
I'm
us-
down 7. I'm down 7. Oh,
Do amoebas
I think I need to
move
go home.
with cilia, flagella, or pseudopodia? Which one? Pseudopodia, they're false feet. They're
There we go. Another one wrong.
so slow.
I was
If you-
really hoping it
if
was
you're really
flagella.
bored one day, pull up
Really
some
hoping.
YouTube videos of amoebas. This way? They sure do, and they bag us their ties.
I saw like one where like
Yep. They can, yes. So that's really cool.
I almost got half this whole thing wrong so far.
What is, number 14, what is the claim to fame statement about
There it is.
charophytes? A type of green algae. What are they most famous for in an evolution sense? Somebody over here. Precursor to plants. They're part of the transitional form to plants.
I just feel like there's a lot of.
Okay, name one type of vascular tissue in plants, and I think I put it up there on Wednesday. What are they?
The xylem or the phloem.
Xylem or phloem. Yes.
I'm
The
taking
xylem
that.
carries the water and minerals upward. The
That's
phloem
something I
carries the food
remembered.
downward from the photosynthetic plants.
Why do I remember?
Okay.
Why do I
True or
remember
false?
that one?
Bryophytes include the mosses, and their most recognizable plant bodies are in the
Yes.
gametophyte generation. It is true. We had it up here.
Remember the mosses.
I don't know, I'm kind of weird this way that even when I used to, be a student, which I still do occasionally, I kind of remember where it was on the board. So it kind of helps to flash that. Ferns have vascular tissues and produce spores rather than seeds. Were they in the vascular part? Yes, and they do produce spores, which are not as complex as seeds, so it's true.
I think I got that.
Yes. Yes, they actually produce
I've only
spores.
gotten
out of
7
their
questions right.
phalangia, which are the organs which produce the spores. And what does the prefix gymno mean?
Naked.
Naked.
1, 2, 3.
Naked. I figured people would remember that.
All right.
Okay.
50-50.
Number 1, are sporophyte generation plants haploid or diploid? Again, if you go back up here, diploid. Sporophytes are a diploid. They're a 2N like we are.
Yes,
If
extra
we were a
credit.
plant, we'd be a sporophyte.
That's another thing I remember. All right. I at least didn't get a
So
50
what is
now.
probably the greatest evolutionary invention for plants to be able to invade and prosper on dry land?
It's just
Has to
seeds.
do with the reproductive
And-
products.
Seeds.
Seeds! Yes.
The question was confusingly
So
worded to
there
me.
are 18 questions
I was thinking,
plus
seeds?
2.
That doesn't sound right to the question.
It's going to make each question worth 1.11 to come out to 20. And of course, you can get higher than 20 if you, anybody
So
think
really,
that-
someone at the door?
now? Okay.
I struggled so
So,
hard.
probably got at least out of actual 20 responses. Anybody think they may have gotten somewhere around 17, 18 positives? Good. We got several people who are saying they think so. Okay, so that's good. How many of you think you got at least, okay, out of 18, at least 14 right? You think at least? Sounds good. Thank you.
And then-
We have a lot to cover next week, but we also slow down a little bit next week. I put in a review day on Friday because either Nam is over this whole diversity taxonomy stuff, up through everything but animals. Okay, so that is a week from Monday is your next exam. I would also, you've got your outline. Ah, here it comes. Okay, I am going to the images. When you go to your learning modules, do you notice that for exam 2, I've got 3 sections for you? I've got the outlines in one, and then I've got study type sheets and visuals in the second one, and then the third one has PowerPoints, which I really don't think you need to copy off all the PowerPoints. I know it's a lot of paper, it's a lot. I mean, if you want to pick some, that's kind of what I did for you with the visuals, is I picked out some of the most important slides, I think, from certain ones, and that's why I want you to study the visual parts for sure. Yes.
For the sake of our notebook, when we turn it in, do you want the PowerPoints on there, or that's what you're saying? It's
I'm
not
leaving that
necessary?
optional for you. No, you don't have to. It is a lot of paper. But I think I would copy off these visuals and have them there. What did you go off
6
for?
slides, and it's still this many pages. It's ridiculous. And this is only just like from now.
It was on.
It's not even,
That's not okay.
no, it's just every chapter now, so like you still have this semester.
So many pictures I need for this is the problem.
Yeah. Slides help. We're helping. Yeah.
How do you like them?
I got an 8.
Oh, very good.
Not too bad.
I like that you put some quizzes up on.
Actually, that's not where I'm going to start. I'm going to start. On page 631 of your textbook, which you can also look at, we've got our plant groups. And gametophyte grouping and sporophyte in terms of dominant. Remember, dominant means this is the form of the plant that you recognize as a moss, or this is the form of the plant that you recognize as a fern. And it asks the question then, is that the N haploid gametophyte, haploid sporophyte? So, and there's examples down here. Mosses and other non-vascular plants. What is the generation that is dominant? Just tell me.
Gametophyte.
Gametophyte. Okay, and it is the dominant gametophyte. The sporophyte is much reduced. It's dependent on the gametophyte for nutrition. This is what you recognize as the moss, and then these little stalks that come up with capsules on the top. At certain times of the year, those are the actual sporophytes that produce the spores. So this is the 2N and this is the N. in contrast to the fern, which the fern, you walk up to this and you say, oh, that's a fern. Well, is that the fern or is that the spore or the gametophyte? Well, this is really, say, well, right here, the sporophyte is the dominant, and the gametophyte is much reduced, is independent, photosynthetic, and free living. And those, look at this, this is how a baby fern starts out, sort of. Here's a gametophyte right here. It's really called a heart-shaped, it's heart-shaped, it's really low to the ground, and it's called a phallus. And that gametophyte then ends up producing the sporophyte, which is the actual plant. But on the back of the fern leaves, we talked about the sorus, which are the little clusters of spore forming, and they produce the spores. And then when the spores are released, they go to the moist ground and they grow into this. Yes.
So what would those, because on the tip ends of ferns, there's typically these hard nodules there. What would those be?
On the tips or just on the back side of the leaflets?
No, on the tip of the ferns. Sometimes it grows out. It's like a hard nodule. It'll sometimes grow out in little ways in ferns.
I'm not sure I have
It's
the
part
answer
of the
to that question.
sporophyte.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is just the rusty looking round spots on the back of the fronds. The fern, by the way, the fern leaves are called fronds, F-R-O-N-D-S. So, and the round spots are called sorus. They're a sorus, S-O-R-U-S, or sori for plural. And so, like I said, the spore then is generated into this gametophyte. Then we get to the big grouping of plants, the seed plants. And we have two main groupings, gymnosperms, which have more naked seeds that are hanging out there on the tips of cones or something like a cone. And the angiosperms, which are housed in a flower type of arrangement. These have a very reduced gametophyte, depending on the surrounding sporophyte for nutrition. It is a dominant sporophyte. So ferns and angiosperms and gymnosperms have a similar dominant. And in gymnosperms, the microscopic female gametophytes are inside these circulant cone. So they are out there, but they're not as protected, because compare that to a fruit, which we discussed on Wednesday, is a ripened mature ovary, usually with seeds, but not always. I mean, they can be crossbred to be seedless. And the fleshy part, or even if it's a nut type of thing, the embryo inside is much more protected and enclosed in a fruit. So we say these are more protected, because this flower part, remember, when it flowers, it's the bottom part of the flower where the fruit is going to start growing from. The flowers will drop off. So you have microscopic male gametophytes inside those parts of the flowers, and the flower itself is a sporophyte, and the same with this tree, this gymnosperm tree. So this gives you a good overview, a lot of what we talked about before, but just to emphasize or re-emphasize. Okay, we did talk about megaspores and microspores yesterday. The real reason why megaspores are female is because the mega, they're larger. The female part is larger. I mean, it's similar to in humans. I mean, the female egg is much larger than the tiny microscopic sperm. Yes.
Is that so like the sporophyte can like get nutrition from like the female like gametophyte or whatever, or the part?
Right, yes. So the microspores are the male part, that develop into pollen grains. So the pollen grains, and some people say, they used to say the whole pollen tube, but pollen grain is fine with me if you know it as the male gametophyte. Okay, so I would write that down somewhere. The male gametophyte is going to be the pollen grain, including the pollen tube. The transfer of pollen is called pollination, and in plants, please understand the process. You have to have pollination first, then you have fertilization, but it's not just a single fertilization, it's a double fertilization with plants. One for the embryo and one for the food source in the seed for the embryo. It's called endosperm. Pollen eliminates the need for a film of water and can be dispersed great distances by air or animals that get stuck on animals, and animals migrate, and then it can be dropped off. So dispersal of seeds is very important to the survival of the species. If a pollen grain germinates, it gives rise to a pollen tube that discharges sperm into the female gametophyte within the ovule. Now, in contrast, let's go back to the last one. In contrast to the male gametophyte being the pollen grain, what is the female gametophyte? The female gametophyte, now I'm talking about flowering plants primarily, so that would be angiosperms, is the embryo sac. So the embryo sac is the female gametophyte.
I have a question.
Yes.
So pollen, as we think of it, like in the air, is that always the male part of the plant?
Yes.
And then it travels to the flower or whatever, and then comes in contact with the female part.
Right, we're going to show you that in just a minute, because we do need a visual for that, I understand. So let's just go down this way. This is just showing you with conifers, just look at that when you get a chance. Let's go to this. Living seed plants can be divided into two clades. There's our clade phylogenetic term. Gymnosperms, angiosperms. Gymnosperms appear early in the fossil record, about 305 million years ago, and dominated the Mesozoic years of terrestrial ecosystems. Gymnosperms were better suited than non-vascular plants to drier conditions, obviously, because they have the vascular system. Now, what are the four phyla? The four main, kingdom phylum. What are the four phyla of gymnosperms? There they are. Cycadophyta, for the cycads. The Ginkgophyta with the ginkgo. There's just one living species, and I told you that's kind of referred to as a living fossil because the species is so old. And Gnetophyta, you don't need to know the three genera of them. And the conifers, Conifera phyta. Phyta always means phylum in plants. Phyta. Conifers such as pine, fir, and redwoods. And all angiosperms are classified in a single phylum, and the actual phylum name for angiosperms is Anthophyta. A-N-T-H-O, Anthophyta. From the Greek word for flower, which is anthos. And angiosperms have two key adaptations, flowers and fruits. So a flower, so what is a flower? A flower is an angiosperm structure visualized for sexual reproduction. Many species are pollinated by insects or animals, while some species are wind pollinated. Any of you allergic to ragweed in the fall? Ragweed is how they have these little green flowers, they're like a spiky thing, and they have these little green flowers.
Goldenrod's a nuisance too.
Yeah, and the pollen is just released into the air, and of course it's microscopic, pretty much. So it's one of the reasons why it can become a problem with people who have a tendency to be allergic. Even more so when it's windy, because it's really traveling in the air during windy times. So what is a flower? A flower is a specialized shoot, which is a stem. But we're going to say the flower is a whole different organ on its own, even though we know it's derived from the stem, with up to 4 types of modified leaves. Now, when you classify different types of flowers, you will look at these different structures more, and it can help you to define what the identification is of a flower. Sepals, you know, you buy flowers like for yesterday, Valentine's Day. Hopefully you all had a nice Valentine's Day. There's like a flower-like set usually around the bottom. Oftentimes they're green, but not always green. They protect it before it buds out. And those are the sepals. And then the actual pretty parts are the petals. Okay, and we have some, and then the male parts are usually the stalk-like structures, and then they have a little knot on top. And so those are the stamens which produce pollen. The carpels produce the ovules, and another name for carpel would be an ovary. So in terms of dissecting that a little bit more, a stamen consists of 3 main parts: a stalk, called a filament, with a sac at the top called the anther, and where the pollen is produced. So the whole structure is the stamen, but the part at the top that produces the pollen is called the anther, and then the actual stalk-like part of it is the filament. A carpel consists of an ovary at the base and a style leading up to the stigma where pollen is received. And you're going, oh, what? So, da-da-da-da. All right. All right, so we're talking male first here. So this whole structure here is a stamen. And this whole structure in the center of this flower is the, they're calling the whole thing the carpel, which is also called, the older name for it is called the pistil. The pistil is the same thing as the carpel. And so in this particular flower, there's only one that's in the middle, and then the stamens are around it. So you've got the ovary at the bottom here, and you see the little ovules which produce the seeds. And then you've got the style, which leads up to the top. And then you've got the sticky stigma at the top. It does have a sticky substance on it. Yeah, so the pollen, when it comes flying through the wind or transfer from an animal onto the stigma, it sticks to the stigma. Okay. Then what happens is it actually, there's a part in the pollen that will drill down through this whole thing, and it will come into this little micropile down here at the bottom. If I put that in there now. This set right now is a comparison of monocots and eudicots or dicots. Eudicots are true dicots, which are dicots. You know, it's nice we have all these different words that mean the same thing. Here's the comparison. I've kind of told you about the parallel vein leaves, the palmate vein leaves, one cotyledon, two cotyledons. Vascular tissue, when you cut a stem and you look inside, you're going to have those vascular bundles are going to be scattered in a monocot, and they're going to be in a ring in the dicot. So we get more into this even with chapter 35. And this is actually the life cycle. I think you really should probably study this one because this is the one we're going to primarily emphasize. Some other different characteristics between monocots and dicots is that monocots have a fibrous root system, like grass, corn, pollen grain with one opening, and floral orchids usually in multiples of 3s. This is really important. Multiples of 3s, like you would have either 3, 6, or 9 stamens, 3, 6, or 9 petals, or it could be up to 12, but multiples of 3s. And dicots have multiples of 4s or 5s. So now you can walk out, if we had any wildflowers, you could walk up to a wildflower and you could figure out by all these characteristics whether or not it truly is a monocot or a dicot by counting the number of flower parts. So that makes it pretty interesting. 5 derived traits of seed plants. You'll need to study that, at least for general purposes, and some products of seed plants and so forth. Fungi we're going to also hit before we go to the actual chapter 35, and that will be our